Welcome to PM Express Business Edition. Today, we're talking about the industries, and they are said to be one of those sectors that have been hit badly by COVID-19. But are they going to survive the shock, or maybe they'll come out stronger? We'll see them tomorrow being active. Some will say that even before COVID-19, they were having their own problems. Well, there's no other person to engage on this discussion than the Chief Executive of the Association of Ghana Industries. We'll take a short break and we'll be right back as we dig deep and talk about industries, their future now. Will they survive or they'll go down? Welcome to PM Express Business Edition. As you look at one sector that some people would argue that if we want to grow, to compete with the others, the giants in the world, that is what will drive our growth. I'm talking about the industrial sector. But with COVID-19, even before COVID-19, they were having their own problems in terms of surviving. The situation bad? Is it getting worse or is it going to get better? What is the state of the Ghanaian industry as we speak right now? As you look at COVID-19 and industries, would they survive the turbulence or they will crash? So Chimokabwa, Chief Executive of the Ghana Association of Ghana Industries. Welcome to PM Express, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, George.
One would ask that, how are your members doing industries? As we speak right now, what is the state of the industrial sector?
Well, thank you, and good evening to your listeners and viewers as well. It's been a challenging time. As you said, before COVID, we're having our own challenges as far as industry is concerned, and manufacturing in particular. And then COVID came in with all its, ramifications. So today, the state of industry, I would say, is a bit of a challenging one. Some are surviving, some are downscaling, some are producing under capacity. A few are doing pretty well. So it's a mixed bag. And I think generally speaking, the challenges are there because, most of our members are SMEs. And SMEs, the adjustments to pressure and in emergency situations are always difficult. So there's that challenge there. Relatively bigger companies are doing, reasonably well. But generally speaking, there's been decline in demand for a lot of goods and services because of the restrictions that we are having. If you take the beverage industry, for example, I think everyone will say, as for water, it's a basic necessity, so water consumption should be good. And therefore, industries producing those products shouldn't have a problem at all. But the reality is that in our homes, the middle class or the average person use more of the sachet water than the bottled water.
Well, that's news to me.
Yes, are you surprised? The average person use sachet water at home. It is the big conferences, the big events, the funeral, the weddings, the big parties. That's where the bottled water, for example, is served. So when you have all these restrictions and these events are not taking place, then demand for it goes down. If you take the breweries, for example, they are also having challenges because bars are not opening, all the big events, the funerals and all are all not taking place. What does it mean? It's a decline in demand. Once you have a demand falling, then you can't produce so much to feed the market. So all these companies are having challenges. During the lockdown period, some even who had orders could not produce the orders. And others were also having difficulty with getting raw materials and all that. Now the situation has eased off a bit. We were just lucky that China didn't stay too long in the lockdown period. They recovered quite fast, so they were able to produce the raw material to supply. Because a lot of our companies import raw materials from China. So that bit was able to solve that. But generally speaking, demand for a lot of goods have gone down, and that has affected industrial production. And in difficult situations, people control their expenditure as well. They only think more about the basic necessities. Let me get my food, let me get my medicine, let me get basic things. Even clothing demand would go down. So in all aspects of our life, things, the demand have gone down, and therefore it has also affected consumption. Bear in mind that as industries are also downscaling and businesses are going down, purchasing power goes down because workers are having challenges getting the right income and all that. And you know that with the advent of the COVID, some companies actually reduce the number of employees others were producing under capacity. So all had an effect. And the effect is that it generally affected the general volume of goods produced. And so, the reason why.
So I get from you that COVID has worsened the situation for industries because of demand has fallen badly, and therefore one would say that who are you producing for?
Exactly the point. COVID has affected demand greatly. And before then, the challenge we had was more of the competition, imports from more advanced industrial economies who have access to cheaper raw materials and technology and other who are competing head-on with us. But even there, we have some companies that were doing quite well. Some are producing and exporting. Some have ISO certification, so they can go to any part of the world. So some were doing quite well. But the COVID situation actually created a different scenario altogether, where demand had to fall, and for that reason, production also had to go down. And it's the reason why government itself has revised its growth rate significantly. And manufacturing is now expected to grow about 0.5% instead of the 6.8 that was projected at the end of the year. So clearly it tells you that industries are having...
But Mr. Koba, this baffles me, because one would say that the borders were closed. And I was still eating despite COVID-19 and the restrictions. I was still taking my bottle of water. I was still taking my drinks. I was still eating. So if all these borders were restricted, they were closed, then where was everybody getting the food from? In terms of those manufactured foods, the canned foods, the water and everything. Even though it might not be at big parties, people were still consuming. I saw people going around preparing food in packs, sharing bottled water and everything. The hospitals, there was a sudden spike in gloves. Now everybody has a box of face masks in his car or wardrobe and all the rest. So unless somebody was secretly bringing in stuff, so therefore there was still the competition element as well.
Well, we produce quite a lot locally. Some of the basic food items, they are all produced locally. And therefore, even if you close the borders, you still have a chunk of it produced from local sources. The challenge we had, and as I said, is the fact that you say you are still consuming your water, but you probably are no more consuming the beers because you are not going to the bars. You are not going to the big
nightclubs.
You are not going to the nightclubs. I don't know the wedding ceremony you've attended lately. And major big funerals that you've attended lately. So the pattern of consumption has changed a bit. The basic one to survive and to eat at home, you would do it. But the ones that you normally would enjoy, that's why I'm differentiating between what is consumed at home and what is consumed at these big gatherings. And companies producing for such big gatherings have really severely been affected. And you talked about the fact that companies producing masks and all that. These are new items that have come in. Of course, we used to have masks in our hospitals, but not me and you sitting here wearing
sanitizers, all kinds of sanitizers.
These are new developments that have come in. They of course become a new opportunity for others to cash in. But it came in at a time, it came as a surprise, and people were not really prepared for it. It took a while for people to get onto it. So that has been a positive side in terms of industrial output, and I think government did well by initially organizing about 5 companies and asking them to produce the mask. And since then, Ghanaians have been producing, so there are local production, there are imported ones, and that has helped. But that has helped a small segment of the industrial chain. If you take those producing hand sanitizers, for example, we were not producing them in these volumes, so they would gain. In situations like this, they are winners. So we could consider them as part of the winners. But bear in mind that even there, hand sanitizers were mainly produced by the cosmetic industry. We have a whole sector of that. And now even the beverage companies
have switched lines,
they've all switched and all that. So companies that were doing very well there, in terms of total output, of course, it's gone up. But individual competition has also become keener. That's why the prices have dropped and all that. That in itself is not bad. After all, it's all being produced in Ghana, so that is good. But that is a small segment of the whole industrial chain and industrial segment. But the bulk of the industrial activities, the general consumption have gone down, and therefore it has affected industrial output. That's why the output, even contribution to GDP and growth rate or half.
With respect to this challenge and how COVID has impacted on your operations, demand have fallen, how has that impacted on your profit? How has that impacted on the restructuring of your operations? And how has that impacted on the one big controversial thing in terms of layoffs? Because if demand is not coming in and per your extrapolations and forecasts, you definitely have to do something to survive.
Yes, different companies have adapted different strategies. Indeed, profits have gone down. And we have always been admonishing our members that in these difficult times, what you should do is to survive. It's more about survival, not so much profit making. So if you can do anything to reduce expenditure and survive, that is fine. There are some who reduced output, but the expenditure rather went up because the social distancing arrangement, some of the companies were telling me, they have to run shifts, they have to reduce the number of workers at the factory floor just so they can meet the social distancing protocols. Others were incurring additional costs by way of transportation to the extent that they were sending buses to pick their staff at the closest possible place from their homes because the more they join the public transport, the higher the chances of being contaminated with the disease and then bringing it to the factory floor. You know, at some point there were sparks here and there, and industries became quite worried. So some of them were really spending money, and therefore their expenditure went up. Meanwhile, out of monetary grounds and all, and the fact that you needed to keep industries running, regardless of the situation, you needed to keep your key staff. So whether they are producing or not, you have to pay them. So that was a big issue. What some did was that they were able to negotiate with the workers. Some reduced, the salaries a little bit in order to keep afloat. Others also downsized a little bit. But generally speaking, most of them tried as much as possible to keep the industry surviving so that bouncing back will not be too much of a difficulty.
You talked about surviving a little bit as in downsizing a little bit. I doubt if it's a little bit. Obviously, most of your members had to let their workers go home, and it's a fact.
I wouldn't say most of them, but significant adjustments were made. Significant
These were layoffs.
Layoffs, you see, I've been cautious here because layoffs has a lot of
semantics.
Semantics. As I said, if you have key staff that you don't want to lose, in situations like this, you would even borrow to make sure that you keep certain key staff working for you. Because when they leave, when you lay them off, the chance of getting them back may be difficult. Maybe they'll go elsewhere unless they don't get any other job. So you want to keep certain key staff that you really need. It is maybe the ancillary activities that you will cut down. So those ones could be affected a little bit. You probably will cut down on a few other areas that are not core to your business. And every business has its core area and the non-core. The non-core activities, you cut it down a little bit. But generally speaking, I would say adjustments were significant. But as much as possible, most of them didn't think of profit at this stage. So they would rather forgo the profit and keep their industries and their workers surviving. But definitely we lost.
So in terms of these workers who were asked to whether stay at home or go home for a while or laid off, any fair idea in terms of the numbers during this period that were asked, not the exact numbers, but a rounded figure in terms of these workers who were asked to go home as a result of COVID-19 and its impact on these manufacturing firms?
There are difficulties here in quoting specific numbers.
Rounded figures, some would say.
But I think that generally speaking, downscale was not less than 30%, at least 30% downscaled, and therefore that is quite significant. But more than 50% definitely kept their workers.
Over 1,000 workers, some would say.
Over 1,000?
Yeah, in terms of the numbers, or more than 10,000 workers, so about.
I mean, you are talking of the whole country, and it couldn't be 10,000, but it could also be more than 1,000.
Okay, so over 1,000 workers.
I don't want us to speculate too much. I think we are even doing some studies to this effect, and I'm sure at the appropriate time we'll come out with specific numbers. I know Statistical Service has done something, but that is their data, and they are talking,
in excess of some 40,000
or something. So that is possible because that's at the national level. Yes, so that is possible.
So industry could be doing maybe 20,000 or something.
Well,
I'm not looking at specific numbers here, but in terms of some figures in the range of 20,000.
Yeah, it could be 10,000 plus. It could. But you see, as I said, most of the industries who are relatively bigger and well organized, they try to keep their workers. So even if they can't pay you the full salary, what they did was that they reduced it a bit. So they are still keeping you. You may not get the full scale salary, but you are still being kept on the job.
In all these things, and if you look at even other bigger economies, I mean, you had then the external force coming inside, the external hand coming inside in terms of government and what they had to do to support industries in these times. Let me first ask you, in terms of AGI, did you make any proposal to government on how manufacturing firms should be handled in these COVID-19 times? You look at other economies, everybody was doing that. Did you table anything did you put anything on the table that this is what you want? Because we knew about what government was trying to do for you. So let's first look at what you put on the table in trying to help you guys stay in business.
Yeah, I think we had series of discussions with government, and we got engaged in a lot of programs and discussions to fashion out a strategy to support industry. It is part of the reason why government came up with the first stimulus package, which was targeting the very micro enterprises. It didn't come out of the blue. It came out of a number of engagements, and I know very well that we even made some proposals on how that stimulus package could be structured and all that. So we got involved, and we made sure that our members applied so that they can also be assisted. So we've had that discussion, but as it came out, it was basically targeting the very small and micro enterprises. And then we had further engagement that is not enough, because if you really want to push industry, then something special must be done for the bigger, relatively bigger companies. And that engagement has also been held. And that's why in the midterm budget review, government came up with a proposal of providing a guarantee scheme for about $2 billion cedis to support the medium-scale enterprises. So we've been involved in all these discussions in coming up with this.
So if I get you right, you were also for a stimulus package in terms of kind of a sort of a stimulus package being advanced to you, not maybe a waiver on taxes or maybe waiver on SNITs and all those things, waiver on the utility payments and all those things, but more of a stimulus package that will be advanced to these manufacturing firms, if I'm right.
Yeah, it's a plethora of things. For some, you may not even need the stimulus package. For some of the big, relatively big companies, they probably will have their own capacity to borrow and to fall on reserves, and also to fall on their international partners to do some injection here and there. So it's not everyone that really need stimulus package by way of financing. But because of the situation, some really needed some reliefs. And as you mentioned, the tax issues could be an issue. Some of the statutory payment, even delaying the payment a little bit could help. So there are different issues that we have discussed. But generally speaking, for the Ghanaian companies, we were pushing for the stimulus package because what was happening was that working capital was really understaged. And you really needed to push and stimulate these companies to produce and keep the workers, and also stimulate the economic dynamics. So generally speaking, we push for the stimulus package, and it was important. If we're able to do it, that would be great, because as you said, in developed countries, better economies are
trillions of dollars to support their manufacturing firms.
So especially manufacturing is tough, and in a situation like this, you really need to cushion them to survive and to grow your economy.
Let me backtrack a little bit in terms of those workers who were asked to go home. Is there any likelihood that they will be called back, or if I'm restructuring my business, if I'm cutting down from 10 lines to 2 lines, obviously, I don't need your job back in this company?
Well, I think the objective of every business, every manufacturing firm or any company, is that you grow your business. If situation compels you to downscale, that is fine. But then what you want to do is to be able to grow the business and bring the people back on. And as you are growing, you need people. So you employ them back. And what is better than the hands that you had who already understand your business, and who for circumstances beyond your country, you wouldn't have asked them to go and sit at home. So if you have the opportunity of bringing workers back, they are the people you follow first. And I don't think any company will just sit down and say, I've managed to get rid of people, so I will not grow, and so I don't employ them. That cannot be the objective of any company. So naturally, if you're able to reorganize yourself, resuscitate your business, and put in more capital and get good market share and expand, you definitely employ more people. So those people have the chance of coming back. There's absolutely no doubt about it.
And that'll be some good news if I'm sitting in the house and I believe that as the economy is picking up, as they are easing these restrictions, that would definitely give some hope to a manufacturing firm, someone that is into the beverage industry, to maybe call me back, but George, I think I need you, so come back. So there's some real hope for them, right?
Oh yes, definitely, definitely. And I think that even when they're asked to go, there's always a communication that is going on. I don't think our companies are relatively well organized, so to speak. And in most cases, what they do that they communicate clearly with the workers that this is the situation we find ourselves, and you are all seeing the numbers. We have to downscale to be able to survive. At this particular moment, maybe your services will not need it that much. So instead of working full time, work part time. If it is once a week that we need you, will work that. So it's not the case that they've been asked to go completely. So there is always an engagement of a sort, and therefore, when there's improvement, the workers are always in touch. It's just a matter of increasing the numbers of working hours, and then you get...
Let's come back to the stimulus package, because some have said that that would be one of the surest ways to revive the manufacturing firms. I don't know about in terms of the size of your membership, in terms of those who make up the SME sector, the medium size and the large. But obviously, some people might say, or some would say that government wasn't thinking about manufacturing firms when they put together that 1 billion CD stimulus package, or maybe just a fraction of your members. Well, look at the size of industries, that money and how it was being shared. I don't see how a beverage firm, maybe Unilever or something, will be looking at support from that 1 billion cities.
I mean, you're right. The target wasn't the big companies, and I think it was clearly defined right from the onset that this is something for micro and small businesses. So for the small enterprises, this was a good thing. But for the bigger companies, because some were getting as small as 1,000, 2,000, and what would that do for a relatively bigger company? You can't even buy petrol for their vehicles. So that wasn't the target. But for the very small enterprises who are also members of AGI, this was very important because that small working capital can enable them to pay some of their workers. It can enable them to buy basic raw materials or basic inputs to continue. But that's for the very micro level. For the smaller enterprise, the money was slightly going to be bigger, 50,000, 100,000, 150,000. And for a small enterprise employing about 20, 30 people, if you get 150,000 injection at the kind of interest rate that we're talking about, and especially since you are not getting access to bank loans immediately, it cushions you quite well. So I agree that the target really was not for the relatively bigger company. There is the reason why we came back and said we needed something special for the real solid manufacturing sector. Of course, the small enterprises are also doing some kind of cottage manufacturing, and they are all part of the value chain. They are important, and therefore giving them something was good. But then we needed to also address the bigger
Let's look at the guaranteed, the 2 billion Ghana cedis guarantee scheme for manufacturing firms. Have you started drawing it down? Oh?
We've not reached that stage, honestly. And as I keep saying, it is...
Isn't it keeping too long? Some would say that.
Well, one would say so, because this is for emergency.
The more it drags, the more your members go down.
Suffer, exactly. So we wish it would have been faster. But we appreciate one thing, though, that unlike the first stimulus package, which was actual funds that were made available and put in a bank and for disbursement, this one is a guarantee. Guarantee means that government itself is not providing the money. It means that it's going to rely on financial institutions to on-lend. But then it gives them the comfort that in case of default, you can fall on this. So it means that the parties involved are a bit more than the first one, which is actual funds that is earmarked and for disbursement. So you need to get banks that have the resources to on-lend. And you're talking of 2 billion, that's quite a significant amount of money. So you need to get banks that are ready and prepared to on-lend. You need to get banks that would also understand you, because once government is coming with a stimulus package, it means that it cannot be the bank's normal business as usual. Interest rate, for example, will have to vary so that it cushions them. Moratorium will have to change so that it cushions them. The processing of the facility will have to take a certain... So there's a lot more to be discussed. So one can understand from that angle. But I fully agree, And indeed, our members are really agitating that, hey, if it's for emergency, then let it come on stream immediately. Because the more you delay, the more you suffer. So we need it urgently, and it has to be immediate.
I know, I mean, at the association level, in terms of engagement with government and with those who are managing this scheme and all the rest, what is the communication? The economists always say that all other things being equal, when are you hoping that maybe a Georgia manufacturing firm, having met all the conditions, can walk into a bank and say that these are my documents, this is everything, let me start drawing down this amount of money?
George, I think it will be difficult for me to speculate at this point. I think what is most important, we have written to the Minister of Finance for further engagement. In fact, we are expecting that early next week, the minister will meet us on this and see how far they've gone with the modalities and when it is coming. Maybe after the meeting, I can give you more precise information. At this moment, I don't want to overly speculate. But the principle is there, the framework is there. The principle is that this is COVID support, okay? And it's coming in because of the challenge we've had. And if that is the case, then it must be as quick as possible. So I don't expect it to drag too long. It has to be coming on stream as soon as possible. Otherwise, it defeats the objective. I mean, if the company collapses completely, then how do you resuscitate it? How do you reorganize it? It becomes difficult. So we expect that early next week, the ministry will meet us and then get updates and get inputs, and then we make progress on it.
And you're hopeful that at least some headway can be made in terms of fast-tracking the disbursement of these funds?
We will push for fast-tracking of disbursement. We will definitely push for it, and I hope that they would understand us. And I want to believe that government appreciates the situation as well. It's the reason why they came up with this anyway. So if that is the objective, why do we all delay and get ourselves into?
I'll be looking at the relationship away from this guarantee scheme. What about the relationship between AGI, industries, manufacturing firms, and the commercial bank? Because we already understand that outside this scheme, they also claimed it to be lending. I mean, over 3 billion Ghana cedis. And people are questioning whether indeed members like yours or your members are really getting the funds. I'll be getting more insight now when we get back from this commercial break. And also the bit about staying competitive as industry. Some are saying that maybe it's Ghanaian industries are struggling because they're just not being competitive. This is PM Express Business Edition. And if you have judged, we're looking at staying alive in this COVID-19 times in terms of from these industries. Would they survive from the shocks of COVID-19 or they will go down? We'll take a break and be right back. This is PM Express Business Edition. It's PM Express Business Edition, and we are discussing an issue that might be dear to a lot of people if you work in a manufacturing firm. And if the country wants to grow, to be competing with the other giants, it's about, some say it's about manufacturing. But in these times of COVID-19, how are they surviving? Or they will actually go down. So Chuma Kobwa is the Chief Executive, the Association of Ghana Industries. And I've been talking to him on a lot of issues, and before we went for the break, we were talking about funding for the sector, the stimulus package and all those things. What is the relationship, what is the situation right now between your members and the commercial banks? Engaging them, they argue that they have advanced over 3 billion Ghana cedis since March to businesses and especially manufacturing firms. There are people who are still questioning that claim. What do you have from your members in terms of access to funding privately with these commercial banks?
Well, I think it clearly shows that we never have enough for the manufacturing sector. I will not be in a position to question whether and express doubt as to whether they've advanced that money or not, because we need to cross-check. But if indeed they've advanced that kind of money and there's still so much demand, and it clearly tells you that we are not having enough of funds going into the manufacturing sector. Demand definitely is outstripping supply here, and therefore something has to be done about it. But when it comes to manufacturing financing, it goes beyond commercial facilities, working capital facilities. You need proper funding, and that's what
long-term funds,
medium to long-term funding that will enable you to expand and do big-ticket business, buy machines, and sometimes do further factories in other parts of the country and take advantage of locational advantages and then geographical areas and all that. So it means that we really don't have solid funding for manufacturing. And therefore, if the commercial banks are saying that we pumped in 3 billion cedis and people are still complaining, then it's not enough. So we need to look at it. But it's also an opportunity that if indeed there's that kind of demand for funding, we should be able to find a solution to that. It means that if we're able to support the banks, in whatever shape or form, to provide this kind of funding, we'll have the banking sector growing because you have a product that you are selling, you have people who are demanding it, So I think that is how I would look at it, that it is possible that they may not have received as much as is being talked about. It is also possible that that kind of money has been pumped. But as long as they continue to complain that they are not having enough, it means that there's a gap between the demand and the supply.
In terms of financing the manufacturing sector, I mean, some would say, or some would also ask that, have you also positioned yourself or made yourself that attractive that a bank would say that I'm looking at this industry, I'm going to do a 10-year facility with that industry? Or you're still not positioning yourself so well that nobody wants to fund you?
Well, I think
moving away the sentimental and the national interest, in terms of pure commercial lending, maybe I'm not going to lend to you.
Well, I mean, this is one question that always comes up. There's the complaint of people not being ready to take, such facilities, risk and all that. But I must say that, generally speaking, we have quite a sizable number of manufacturers who are well organized, who have the necessary documentation to back whatever application they are doing, who have a vision, and who have the systems to work. And therefore, if they get solid funding, they can do very well. Of course, there are also a number that are not, quote unquote, that ready. Those are especially at the small scale level. And that's why government has its own programs like the MBSSI, to support such small enterprises to come up, improve their business operations and so on and so forth. But there are today a number of seasoned business people around who are looking for solid funding to do big ticket business, who are not getting it. So that argument, I don't think it fully holds for everyone. I think that there's still quite a number. But the reason why banks probably may not be able to lend that long term is not just because people are not ready. It is also because of the dynamics of the environment and the system. Because you need to have a very predictable environment to lend that long. The banks also complain that they don't have enough loanable funds on long-term basis because the kind of deposits that they have from their customers is short-term. If they are lending long-term, then you need to have that kind of funding. There's a reason why in some jurisdictions they have development banks, banks that have a certain kind of capital or capitalization that enables them to lend long-term. So the funding source is key. If commercial banks are only having funds that are short-term in nature, they will have difficulty lending long-term. And long-term lending also doesn't have to take the kind of interest rate that we are talking about. If you are lending long-term, you are charging 30%, they will collapse along the line. So there are so many things that goes into medium to long-term lending. I think the challenge we have is not because we don't have companies that are prepared to take such facilities or are not prepared in terms of documentation and business models and all that. It is rather because we don't have the kind of financial models and engineering that support such arrangements.
Then I get from you that you'd be so optimistic and so excited about talk about development bank, which some would say all other things being equal, it could take off this year.
We are very looking forward to it, and we are very hopeful that it's going to make a game changer. We have been pushing for it all this year. It's the reason why at some point we are even trying to make our own effort to establish an own bank, because we think that you need a development banking. For a developing country, you need it, because the typical commercial banking is not what will change the manufacturing sector, who wants relatively riskier facility on a medium to long-term basis in a quote-unquote sometimes unpredictable environment, which is also highly competitive. You need some development banking arrangement, which will take risk, on a long-term basis and give loans to such. So we actually need the development bank, and I think that if it comes, but development banks normally has its model of operation. You need to have people who understand industry, who understand manufacturing, their cycle of business, and so many things, and project management. You need to have such caliber of professionals that will manage the bank and ensure that they understand the business that they are operating and supporting, and then it will work out.
So what happened to, I knew that in the bank in the days there were plans by the Association of Ghana Industries to establish a bank. What happened to that? Is it still on the table, or you botched it because of now there are plans to establish a development bank?
Oh, well, I think that why were we aiming at doing that? It was to fill a gap. And the gap has been that we don't have solid development financing in the system. The commercial banks that we know are providing commercial funding. They are doing their best, but that is what they can do because of what I said. Source of funding, the arrangement, the dynamics, the understanding of business and all that. So there was that gap. And it's the reason why we were interested in pushing this agenda. So we really had good intentions and had really solid plans to do this. But I think the dynamics are changing now. And today, if AGI, because the industries needed funds badly, and therefore asking industry to also come out to the bank and on lend, it was going to be a bit of a challenge. But we have not completely abandoned the idea.
Oh, it's still on the table.
We are happy that government is coming up with something, and we are supporting government to implement it. And I'm sure that in its implementation, government will take account of our interest and our role, will play a key role in it. So if it addresses that question and fill that gap for us, that'll be fine. And then as we go forward, we'll see what the dynamics will be in the near future.
Let's look at the competitiveness of manufacturing firms in this country. And some are saying that maybe you are your own problem, and it's not about the environment or funding, because people think that most manufacturing firms in this country today are not competitive. They've not structured the operations to be competitive, rather than always pushing for a protectionist environment.
I don't think we push for protectionist environment. We actually push for a fair environment that is friendly, environment that is conducive, environment that enables you to do business in a competitive manner. So that is not a protectionist environment. For example, if electricity cost is high and your competitors in other countries are buying at a lower and a cheaper cost, and they are outcompeting you, is that a protectionist request? No. If your interest cost is high, if you are borrowing at 25 to 30%, and somebody else is borrowing at 10% or less than 10%, their cost of operation is lower, then they are outcompeting you. That is not a protectionist. And if your tax laws requires that when you are bringing in finished goods, you must pay a certain duty. And if people are able to bring their goods in without paying that kind of duty, and also bringing substandard products, cheaper products that is not meeting even your own national requirements, and industries are saying we need to police it. Is that a competitive environment that we are afraid? No. I think if you look at a lot of the Ghanaian products, the quality is good. Some have ISO certification. They're actually exporting to several other countries. So the question of being protected doesn't come in here. It's about fair competition, and that's what we're always pushing for. Of course, we have an infant industry if you compare us to the developed world. So in certain ways, and when you talk of protectionist arrangement, bear in mind that the WTO has its own requirements and all that, and we are part of the WTO. So as long as you stay within the WTO regulations, then there's nothing like you protecting your industry. So I think we should disabuse our minds of that.
Do you think that industries are giving up their best to some of the goods that they sell to the local market? You talk about them exporting, and I've seen certain Ghanaian products on the shelves in supermarkets in London and US, and I didn't believe that they were manufactured in Ghana. I came back to Ghana, and that was the same product I was getting on the shelves of Ghanaian supermarkets.
Well, I don't know which specific products you are talking about,
but that is the perception that you're doing more when you are exporting, but when you are producing for the local market, it appears that you don't get that same level of quality of goods.
But you see, the thing is, any serious business person appreciates one thing, that competition is there to take your market if you don't manage it well. If you decide to shortchange your customers, okay, by exporting the best of products outside the country, and then you bring shoddy products into your local market, then you are shortchanging yourself, because in the near future, people will get to know, competition will come.
Ghanaians will buy sentimental, buy made in Ghana goods. That is what you are pushing instead of quality product on the market.
That's absolutely wrong. That's not what we are pushing. We are pushing for fair competition. We are pushing that we bring the best of product into the Ghanaian market, but we also want to push that foreign products that come in are equally of good quality. And then there are opportunities for monitoring the standards of products that are coming into the country. That is the whole arrangement. We are not asking that even when we produce shoddy products, it should be in the market. You, the consumer, when you are going to buy, you have a choice. We have reached a stage in our development where the consumer has so much choice. Today, you can Google, you can on your phone, you can check so many products. And now you have shopping malls. You have different places of buying, and so you have a choice. If you are buying, you decide what one to buy. And the price at which you buy the product depends on the quality that is presented to you. So the consumer has a choice. So you, the manufacturer who decides that I'll bring shoddy products into the market, somebody else will bring a better product and take your market share. So no manufacturer would deliberately do that.
Okay.
What is important though is that for industries to thrive very well, and anywhere industry has done well, is that they have standards, and the standards are enforced. Okay, so if you're talking of going to UK or Europe or whatever, and you see Ghanaian products and they have certain maybe aesthetic quality, it's because they are meeting certain standards. Packaging is super. So, but then packaging has cost. The more of these you add, the aesthetics aspect and all that, it makes the product price
and
high.
it tastes good.
Very good, but we have the same here. We have the same. I don't think, if you take chocolate, for example, when cocoa processing does its chocolate, do they sell different chocolate in Ghana?
Well, I cannot say.
No, we don't want to go into the space, but I can say that a lot of, but sometimes it's good to give practical examples. Take the product of Blue Skies. You see it in our shops here.
Asda's in London,
the
lots
same
of them
product,
all over.
good quality. Take the products of, say, the cable manufacturers, the same quality. So you cannot say that because you are selling in the Ghanaian market, you are compromising on quality. And I'm saying that if you do so, others will take the market from you.
Let's look at the regulatory environment and what government should be doing and not be doing. I mean, recently, and even in the manifesto of this government, we get signals where some imported items, taxes are being waived on it. Some are saying that, well, that is real competition. Others are saying that, listen, if you waive these taxes on imported items that are bringing it in and they can be produced here, you are indirectly killing the same industries that will turn around and say that they are not competitive.
Yeah, I think in all this, we've got to be strategic. Strategic in the sense that we have the CFTA ahead of us, and you are preparing your industry to take advantage of that bigger African market. How do you prepare them? First, you create market opportunities for them so that they can produce in large quantities, and on the basis of the large quantities that they are producing, they can enjoy economies of scale, price will come down, then they can become competitive in other markets as well. So the dynamics are clear. Now, if that is the case, and you are allowing imported products to come in, okay, and then you say you are taking off import duties, whereas in those other countries where they are coming from, they are also attracting or charging import duties on your products which you export to them. Then are you being fair to your own people? It's not a fair playing field. So what you want to do is that you have to be strategic, pick products that you can conveniently manufacture in country. For those ones, of course, you have to protect your people a little bit by way of these import duties. But bear in mind that all these import duties, there are tariff bands depending on the jurisdiction you're operating. Under ECOWAS now, we have the common external tariff. So that's giving you the range of tariff that you can actually operate on. Now we're going to have a CFTA. In the CFTA zone, there are tariff bands for different products. So you can't even go outside these frameworks. And therefore, once you go by that, everybody will be fine. But where, as a country, you have the liberty, still within the WTO arrangement, you have the liberty to impose certain tariffs to protect your local industries. You have to do it because they are all doing it in the other countries. So I think it's the best approach to things. It does not in any way mean that you are overly supporting your local industries at the expense of the consumer. It doesn't mean that. But we keep saying that for products that you don't produce in the country, okay, for various reasons, maybe the raw material base is not there, the technology is not there, we are not that sophisticated to produce. for those products, there's no point imposing high import duties on it, because otherwise it affects the consumers. But for those that you have local capacity, you should encourage local production to go on.
It's good you've spoken about ECOWAS and producing within the market and the African Continental Free Trade Area. What is the AGI's position on this whole thing about enforcement of investment rules in retail market? Because I knew that recently Nigeria also closed their borders to have your members who were actually exporting to that country and they were stopped. What is the position of AGI on this? Should we enforce our investment laws, or because that we are now more of a common market, let's break down all those rules and let all of it move around?
Well, I think that our governments can discuss these issues between Ghana, Nigeria, and other ECOWAS countries. There are common issues that we discuss, and we should have a common solution to it. I mean, I remember recently when Nigeria decided to close their borders, at Benin. It affected a lot of Ghanaian companies. Some of our products, our companies got stuck at the Benin border for weeks, and products were getting rotten, expenditure on rented vehicles and all that. It also affected Ghanaians badly. But I don't think that is the way to go. We should have a common position on a lot of things. If in the wisdom of ECOWAS, there should be free movement of people, the people should be able to do any kind of trade. Then we look at our internal regulations and laws. It has to be consistent at the regional level. It must be negotiated. And in that case, and then everybody should adhere to it. I think that is what I would say. So as long as others are not adhering to it, you will have these situations happening, because one country gets up and does what he wants, which is not consistent with the general laws of ECOWAS. In that case, others may also have retaliatory measures, but that is not good for anybody. So I think that there must be dialogue, there must be discussions, that we'll have a common solution to it.
Let's respect our internal investment laws or investment trading laws or something. Some would say that. Because some are saying that retail space is being left for just Ghanaians. Yes. Foreigners can come in, but they should just respect the laws. Bring in X amount of capital, employ this number of Ghanaians so that you can trade in that space.
The point is that we have our laws. And our laws must be respected at all levels. That is very important. But I'm also saying that in some instances, our laws itself may not be consistent with other protocols that we have signed. In that situation, we have to look at it, together with the other countries that are also part of it, so that everybody will all have laws that is consistent with the general laws that we are governing ourselves. So if our laws is not consistent with that, what do? We need to discuss it. And then others must also do same. Then we have a common position in all this.
Africa Free Trade Area, they are saying that all other things being equal, it should take off from January 2021. How ready are Ghanaian industries and manufacturing firm for this?
Well, you can never be fully ready, and you cannot say that because you are not ready, it shouldn't start. I think what is important is that it's a process. And what is also important is that you need to strategize. And strategizing means that you need to show up your industrial output so that you can take advantage of the African market. You're also going to open up your market. And therefore, in terms of readiness, I think that there's a lot that is happening. For example, the 1D1F is bringing up a number of factories, which hitherto we didn't have. If we get them really properly established, I think we will be in good position to also export to other countries. And then also, our local industries that are already operating, how do we upscale it? You see the new developments of even VW coming to the vehicle assembling plants that are coming here. They are not just targeting the Ghanaian market, they are also targeting the African market. So for me, I think we are preparing well. But whilst preparing, we must be strategic. For example, the idea of coming back on the import duties, removing the plan to possibly remove import duties on sanitary parts, for example, which we spoke about.
You think it's wrong?
I don't think it is the best way to support local industry, because you have local manufacturers who are producing these items. So that kind of thing, we need to look at it. And I think if we work with industry and support them, we should be able to take advantage of it. There's an aspect that I also want to bring to the table. When we say we are strategizing and we are thinking of increasing the capacities of industries, there are some small enterprises that will hardly grow to become giants in the near future.
They want to play in their space, their comfort zone.
They want to play in their space. So what you do is that you must have aggregators, big companies that will be able to pull resources together, pick products from these small companies, develop their capacities at those levels, put them together, then it becomes bulk product you can export. So that they also participate in the CFTA arrangement, apart from the big companies that can actually do their own business, outside the country.
Because the concern here for a lot of people is that, listen, we will sit here, this thing will start, and Ghanaian industries and manufacturing firms will start complaining that we've opened our borders too much and now we are collapsing. And that's where the 5 months, 6 months, this thing is taking off.
You are perfectly right. And sometimes we get scared, we get worried. But on the other hand, we also see opportunities coming. So it all depends on how you play it. I know that we've been engaging the ministry. And in fact, in this year's budget, for example, AGA is making a very strong recommendation for government to earmark some funds just for CFTA arrangement, so that you can cushion certain industries, put them in a certain position that can easily can enable them to actually export and produce on a large scale. So it's all about strategy and how we plan it.
Strategy and planning, maybe those are the concerns of industries as we actually join other countries when it comes to this Africa Free Trade Area. Well, how prepared are they? And maybe it looks like they will survive the storm of COVID-19. My name is George Jaffe. I've been engaging the Chief Executive Association of Ghana Industries on looking at whether they will survive or not. I know the debate will go on in your homes and offices, but what best can be done to protect the local manufacturing firms? Have a great day. My name is George Jaffe.